Good evening, everyone. My name is Christian Bucko from University of Essex. I am your host for this evening. I would like to introduce to you our latest webinar, Breaking Business Barriers with Augmented Reality, part of our Space to Grow program. We are recording this webinar and we'll be distributing it to all of you in the coming days. Please feel free to ask your questions throughout the duration of this session using either the Q&A function or the chat function. We will answer those towards the end of the actual webinar. Now, without further ado, I would like to introduce our speaker for today, Bertie Mills from Virtual Umbrella, presenting to you on how creating a new dimensions using augmented reality and virtual reality can work for you. Bertie, please share your screen.
Yeah, good afternoon. Thank you so much, Christian, for the introduction. And thank you so much to the University of Essex and to John and to Christian for allowing me to host this webinar today. This is actually the second webinar that I've hosted as part of this series. The first one we did was kind of similar. That was more about how you can use all immersive technologies. This webinar is going to follow quite a similar kind of thread, but the only difference is we're going to have more augmented reality examples within it. But I'm also going to talk about immersive technology as a whole, because I feel like it's really important to get quite a contextual understanding before you just look at which technology is necessarily right for you. Cool. Okay, so what is immersive technology? So immersive technology in its current form kind of boils down into three different areas: VR, AR, and MR. So VR is virtual reality. And as you can see from our lovely little robot there on the left-hand side, this is where the object is inside an entirely virtual environment. So everything that it interacts with is virtual and it's just completely in a virtual space. The next we have augmented reality. So augmented reality is that center one. This is where the information is overlaid onto the real world. So this would be something like a heads-up display, something you might see in a film like fighter pilots using, or something you might get on your phone like Pokemon Go, where it doesn't actually have the understanding or the contextual knowledge to interact with the world, but you can see it on top of your real world. And the final one is mixed reality. Mixed reality is where the objects have the contextual understanding to understand the real world, so digital objects can interact. So you can see on this one, the little robot, it's hiding behind the sofa. So the way that the program works is it understands the depth and how far the objects are away. It knows the sofa is closer than the robot is meant to be. So it knows to occlude the robot behind the sofa. XR is kind of like an umbrella term used for all of these immersive technologies. So personally, I prefer to use the term immersive technology because I feel like that's a bit more clear that you're talking about all different types. But lots of the time people use the word XR or the term XR. And just to make things more complicated, no one is really quite in consensus about what XR means. So for some people, XR is short for extended reality, as in all types of realities. For some people, X is like X as in crossed realities. So the intersection of all of them. And for other people, X is like the mathematical variable. So you could replace A, R, V, M, anything where the X is to create that type of immersive technology. So yeah, I just like to keep it simple. Immersive technology or XR. There's no point trying to accidentally get into arguments with people about what XR exactly means. It's easier if we just go, yep, that's fine. You guys can deal with that problem. We're just going to focus on the technology today. Cool. So in addition to VR, AR, MR, we also have 360 video. 360 video is another really impressive way to engage an audience. Unlike virtual reality, where you're entirely in a virtual space, you can move around, you can interact, 360 video kind of puts you in a single perspective within that space. Just like the term suggests, it's 360. So you put the headset on and you can look all the way around. You have 360 photography, which is where the image is static, and then 360 video where the image or like the video, moves. You could be in the middle of a film, or you could be in a learning and development exercise. All sorts of different scenarios. And depending on what your use case is or what you're trying to achieve, this might be the best way to do it, which is why I make sure to also mention this example. So, looking at the hardware out there, For augmented reality, we have devices like the Microsoft HoloLens and the Magic Leap 1. These are the two headsets which are on the top of the screen, the ones that are in the thousands of pounds in terms of price. So the reason there's a plus mark next to the price is because this is just for your basic level headset. In reality, if you're a business and you're looking to use this technology, you're going to be looking at enterprise level hardware, which really is the same content, it's the same piece of hardware, but you're looking at extra services and extra things that come with it. So if you buy the enterprise level Magic Leap, for example, you get a 2-year warranty, you get expedited shipping, they give you extra support, like one-to-one support whenever you need it, and you get a whole wealth of like extra accessories and stuff alongside it. But more importantly than all that extra accessories and stuff, it also means you have a different type of end user license agreement. So it basically means that you've paid Magic Leap extra money, and now Magic Leap give you permission to use their hardware to make yourself money. And it's the same with the Microsoft HoloLens. The picture we have of the HoloLens there, so that's the black headset on the left-hand side. This is actually almost out of date. The Microsoft have now released, or they've now announced, and it's like being rolled out slowly, the HoloLens 2, which is a revised, more advanced version of that current headset. So it's got better battery life, better display, and you're going to be able to see one in a video later on in the presentation. In terms of virtual reality headsets, we have headsets like the HTC Vive, which is the blue one, and that's kind of like your top tier virtual reality experience. So the highest definition available, really great audio quality. Then you're moving down towards the Oculus Quest, which is that middle one. This is probably like your main like core headset. This is what is kind of like really growing the market at the moment. So it's got an approachable price. You can do room scale activities in it. So you put the headset on, you can walk around in a space. You're not just stuck in one location. And you get things like hand tracking and controllers. So you can play activities, you can use your hands for stuff. It's really good as just like an all-round good to use headset. And then finally, on the lower end of the market, you have the Oculus Go. This is the light gray one over in the corner. So the Oculus Go, it's actually sadly just been discontinued. You can still pick them up. So from places like Argos or from overclockers.com or even on the Oculus Store, I think, but they're not going to be producing any more of these. This is like your really basic entry-level headset. So it's still better than, one of those Google Cardboards that you might have seen 2 or 3 years ago, where it's obviously just made of cardboard after the name. This is quite entry-level. You can't move around in the space. You're kind of just stuck in one location, looking around, and you just have one controller, which you use in one hand. So you don't have that kind of level of immersion and depth. So moving on to software. These are 4 of the key softwares that people are currently using. So all of these technologies can actually be used for creating augmented reality. Unity and Unreal are that's what they use for making VR, but you can also use them to create augmented reality stuff too. So augmented reality experiences tend to be made in one of these 4 engines that you can currently see in front of you. Spark AR is Facebook's development program. This is for creating things like Instagram filters or Facebook filters. So whilst it's not necessarily the most in-depth or advanced version of augmented reality or mixed reality, it's still there. Like, you can do things like you can create an application and then you host it through Instagram, and it can decide what you should eat today based on like a roulette wheel and stuff like that. Like, it's still interactive, it's still engaging. So who is the audience for immersive technologies? When we think about the audience for immersive technology, it's also essential for us to think about the actual youth of the industry. The industry is still very young. People say it's been going for decades, and technically immersive technology has, but this new wave of technology has only been really going since maybe 2014, 2015. Perkins Coie are a big law firm out in Silicon Valley. They're the kind of people who negotiate equity raising rounds for multi-millions and millions of funding. They negotiated a lot of funding and investment and sales for VR and AR companies, which means they've got quite an interest and quite an investment personally in the space and ensuring that they see growth and that they can inform their potential clients. So every year they do an AR and VR survey. And this year, in the survey they released, they saw that 46% of their survey respondents, which are made of people who work in the industry, they said that a lack of an established market is a real barrier. So whilst this is still a young industry, I'm still seeing opportunities for growth out there, but we haven't seen that growth just yet. So whilst this might seem like a negative, I actually see it as quite an opportunity for us. Outside of gaming and entertainment, the respondents from this survey expect the most disruption to be in healthcare, medical, and manufacturing over the next 12 months. And 38% of them, not 38, pointed to healthcare and medical devices as being ripe sectors for disruption. And also education is a real potential place as well. So the final headline I'm going to pull out from this report, because I think this is a real good example of where technology has been used well, is Lockheed Martin, in their development of the Orion spacecraft, they saw a 90% reduction in their labor costs by using AR and VR. And this is for things like rapid prototyping. So instead of the old styles where they have to build miniaturized models, or they have to build models out of clay to test things like aerodynamics, now they can do rapid prototyping using VR and AR. And it's really simple and really fast to change things. It's just a case of clicking a few buttons, putting on a headset, your boss can see it in true scale. And then if they say there's something they don't like, or someone notices something that might be quite wrong, you can just change it very quickly and then test again and test again and test again. So yeah, that's a real cost saver and time saver. So I think this is where this technology really thrives and where it can really drive efficiency. So another report that we like to reference is PWC's Seeing is Believing report. So they commissioned this in 2019. And this took their data team at PwC about 3 months to compile. So they did a lot of research. And for them, this is kind of a, look, we understand this industry. You should come to us to talk about your immersive technology solutions. So PwC's angle with this, they're not trying to push the market upon people. They're just trying to show their expertise in the space. So in the next 10 years, they expected to see a $1.5 trillion dollar boost basically in GDP globally from AR and VR technologies. They can't see the future, and this was 2019, so they didn't see the current global lockdown that we're currently going through. But who can predict the future that accurately? But here we can see there's still an exponential growth that is expected. It might not be as high as currently on there, just due to current factors and how that will affect the future and scale in the future, but we're still expecting a significant increase over the next 10 years. In terms of comparative economic contributions, augmented reality is going to contribute more to the economy than virtual reality. But I think it's really important that we don't compare these technologies as adversaries. It's not a case of you use AR or you use VR. It's not black and white like that. Each technology has different use cases and each one is going to be better at a different thing. So I think that whilst this shows the comparative contributions and how popular one's going to be over the other, I don't think you should use this to kind of sway your decision. There's lots of other factors which will kind of sway that decision for you. And my final pull out from this report is looking at the areas where we're going to see the most growth and enhancement based on this technologies. And we're looking at places like the USA, China, Germany, and the UK, and then some surprising ones like Finland and the United Arab Emirates, which I didn't personally expect to see on there. But when I think about it, it kind of makes sense. Finland's quite a technical hub, and the UAE is a country that's just constantly growing. And I can see them using investments in this technology for those purposes. I'm going to mention one more report, and this is the Immersive Economy in the UK. And this was commissioned by Immerse UK and Digital Catapult. So Digital Catapult are a private sector business that do a lot of work promoting technology and promoting innovation really across the UK. They're partially funded by the Knowledge Transfer Network and by Innovate UK. So they get some government money, and that kind of gives them their remit, but they are actually a private organization. And this was commissioned by them in collaboration with Immerse UK, which is a public entity that is wholly owned by the Knowledge Transfer Network, which is part of Innovate. So what's quite interesting from this report is looking at some of the pullouts from here. So 37% of the respondents to this report said that immersive technology helped them to create networks of organizations to collaborate with. So they found new connections, new business opportunities out there. And also that 65% said that immersive technology had opened up new markets and new sectors to them. And if you out there in the audience are looking at this as how does this affect my business or how can I use this, 47% said that this has enabled a widening of their current client base. So rather than finding new clients, it's about strengthening and lengthening the relationships you have with your current clients. So I'm going to take a quick drink. And we'll look at opportunities within immersive technology and within XR. So learning and development. This example here, this is just a quick GIF. So I know this might turn up a bit choppy on your screen, which is why I'm going to try and cut back to the static screens as much as I can. So that is an example created by a company called Make Real based in Brighton. The client was Lloyds Bank, and the use case is around personal vitality and resilience. So it's about you put on the VR headset and you run through an exercise where you talk to different members of your team, and the overarching narrative is that there's a restructuring that's going to be announced within the organization. At this point, it's just rumors, but you know for a fact that there's going to be a big meeting called later and restructuring may be on the cards. And as part of this, people are going to lose jobs. So you run through the experience and you talk to your members of staff, and it's all about identifying if they're in the burnout stage, if they are thriving, if they're barely surviving. And it's about being able to see like which mental state your staff are in so that you can either A, make sure they're getting the right support, or B, making sure they've got enough work to do to make sure they're working efficiently and effectively. So that's more of like a soft skills application. And now we're looking at more of a hard skills application. So whilst the last one is more like less tangible, it's more emotional, this one's much more climbing poles and digging holes. So again, this might turn up a bit choppy on your screen, so I'll cut back in just a second. This is another example by Make Real based down in Brighton. And this was a project that they worked on for Orsted, who are one of the world's largest manufacturers of clean energy. And they run and they build a lot of wind turbine farms. As part of this, they need technicians to go out onto the wind turbine farms and maintain them. And this is an exercise which allows them to learn some of the really important key basics in a safe environment. So much less risk. And also they don't have to pay to send out a boat or to decommission a wind turbine for the day whilst they put training through it. It means that people can do their real basic training nice and fast and then be attached to an existing team. So what you might have been able to see in the GIF, it might have been a little bit too choppy for this, is when you disembark the boat and get onto the ladder, you have to wait until the wave gets right to its swell, it's at its highest point, and then you have to get off the ladder. And it sounds like common sense when you think about it, but obviously the reason for this is if you get off and it's halfway down, that boat could come up and it could hit you and you could get really hurt and you could even die. But it's the kind of thing where unless you've been through that training, that might not seem like common sense. That muscle memory might not kick in. So being able to give that sort of basic training in advance in a safe space can be really important and essential. So looking at more marketing and PR examples, the example I'm going to give here is the client was Audible. And again, this is another company based in Brighton. It's not the same one though. I'm trying to make sure I have some objectivity in here. So this example should play. I'm hoping the sound doesn't play with it so I can talk over the top. So this is what VR Craftworks made for, come on, let's get working. There we go. This is what VR Craftworks made for Audible. So you pick up a newspaper and it comes with their handout in it. And when you use the Shazam app over the top, you get these augmented reality examples of books. So whilst it's still augmented reality because it's not reacting to the real world, it is almost reactive in that depending on what page you're on and what you scan, your examples change and the books that are offered to you change. So you can see here, this is where it takes you to the call to action. The idea of this is to try and get people to sign up for free samples. So here you go. When they look at the love letter, it's meant to be different examples. So here it's suggesting that you listen to this book. So that's a real nice example of basically Amazon owns Shazam. So Amazon are using their own technology and the potential of their own technology to then try and upsell another one of their own technologies. So looking at retail and consumer, the videos for this part, I'm gonna have to tab out to YouTube, but we should be on screen share. So you should be able to just see my screen. So if that doesn't happen for any reason, hammer in that chat again. So the first example is IKEA. Here we go. So this is IKEA Place. So it's an augmented reality application, and this is from 2017. So it's actually quite old now. But the idea here was Apple had just released their AR kit on their phone. So augmented reality that could be built into their mobile devices using the technology available in the phones. And IKEA have digital twins of almost all of their furniture. So they have a digital accurate copy of physical objects. And the idea is that it stops this happening. It means that you can put the device, you can look at the furniture in your home, you can see how it's going to fit, you can see how it's going to look, and it's going to give you another chance to, you know, decide if you really want it. And the benefit for IKEA here is you might buy stuff more. There you go, you can see, look at all these happy customers going through. Another example is 19 Crimes. So 19 Crimes are a fairly premium wine brand, and their whole sort of brand is based around notorious criminals who go on the front of the wine bottles. And let's close this one and load up this one. So with this, you download the augmented reality app from a company called Augment. You hover it over the wine bottle, and then he tells you a story. So this is using some fairly basic technologies. Yeah, there you go, Spence, D-Spence. Like you said, this is a really effective, really nice application. So between this one and between the IKEA one, these are really nice and really quite simple applications of augmented reality technology. They're quite light in terms of you don't have to think so much about your distribution strategy and how you're going to onboard people, because most people, I mean, something like 95% of people will have a phone now that is capable of augmented reality technology, and will have the stuff built into the phone in order to do it. So we're going to look at entertainment now. This video is embedded within the presentation. I'm hoping the sound doesn't play, but if it does, I'm sorry in advance because it's quite loud to begin with. If not, I'm going to try and catch it as fast as I can. Cool, I've already got it on mute, so we should be good. So this is the Wizarding World. This is, it's called Wizards Unite, and it's by the same people who made Pokemon Go. So Niantic, which are actually a spin out from an R&D division of Google. And the whole point of this game is that you have your phone and you can walk around, and it has geolocation built in. It's got all the social elements involved, so you can find other people who are playing the game as well. And you can collaborate with them and work with them to defeat much more powerful wizards. And you can use that to take areas. So you can have like areas of control. So whilst it's almost like quite a localized small game, it rapidly becomes bigger because your city, you're in charge of, like, you might be on Gryffindor, for example. That might be your team. And you have to get the areas of control, and you have to get them under Gryffindor's control. And then other people are playing for Slytherin. So it's quite competitive. And it's quite fun, it's quite engaging, and it's got that replayability factor. So now, looking at healthcare. So healthcare, like we said before, is a real prime growth area for immersive technology. I think with things like media and with marketing and entertainment, we've kind of seen these in the press for a while. They get quite a lot of news coverage. But things like healthcare, because they need to wait for the technology to be proven before they can really be proud to talk about it and actively talk about it, it means things have been a little bit quieter in terms of, yeah, us hearing about it. So this is Azurion. Azurion is a massive project by Philips, as part of a huge R&D push. And part of it involves using the Microsoft HoloLens 2 headsets. So here we are. So this is about doing surgery without having anything physical. So here you can see they're pulling the holograms in. These are all dynamic. So this is actual live results being fed from the patient and ways to monitor them. So it allows surgeons and people who are in the operating room to have more knowledge of the patient, to be more informed. But I think probably the most exciting benefit about this is the safety aspects of it, that there's nothing to touch. The surgeon's gloves do nothing but touch the patient. They don't need to use any charts, touch any charts. Everything's holographic. And as far as I'm aware, you can't catch bacteria on a holographic display. So normally, back in the old world, before the lockdown, when we did these kind of webinars and these kind of workshops, we'd kind of talk through some examples like we just did, and then we'd have a use cases section where we'd bring a bunch of the technology down and we'd have some real playable examples. So you could put headsets on, you could hold augmented reality displays, and you could like get to grips with this stuff. We could talk through it in a bit more depth. Obviously that isn't possible. So these examples, I'm going to try and give a little bit more context to them. So rather than just talk about what they are and what they did, I'll talk a little bit about what the challenge was, how they solved it, and how they measured the return on investment from it. So I think with solutions, with like software development in all ways, you need to really think about what the return on investment is and what your success metric is going to be. So some people base their success metric on the amount of money saved, or the amount of money that was spent versus they might have spent on something else, or how much money that project has generated. But sometimes your success metrics may be less tangible than that. It may not be about hard figures and about money. But these success metrics, you really need to define them at the start, because that's going to be what kind of drives your project through and ensures that you stay on course for the whole thing. So the first example we're going to look at here is DHL. So let's get this video up. Okay, so DHL use vision picking in some of their warehouses in Germany. So vision picking is where the warehouse picker has an augmented reality headset and it aids them in their job and in their role. So in this video here, you can see they scan their ID badge. From the ID badge, it goes to the database, it understands their manifest for the day and what their tasks are. And then from here, they can help tell them where they need to go in the warehouse, how much of the thing they need to pick up. And the whole point of this is to reduce human error, but also to reduce the mental workload on the actual staff member themselves. So you can see here that's scanning the package. So step one is that it guides them to exactly where they need to go. So staff can be much more efficient. They don't need to look for the aisles. Step two is it reduces the mental load, because they're not thinking about the aisles and where they need to go. They're able to just go straight there, which hopefully will make them less stressed, give them a bit more satisfying work environment. And then finally, it scans the package itself when someone picks it up. It scans the barcode against the manifest, which means unless there's an error higher up the pipeline, it reduces the amount of human error, because it's going to scan that package and tell them if they've got the right one. So yeah, those are the kind of the success metrics on this. They were based on satisfaction, speed, and reduction of human error. So some of those can be rounded down, they can be devised from metrics and things like that. Some of them can't. So this is why I say with your success metrics, it's important to look at not only the tangible benefits, but also the intangible benefits from it. There's also another example from DHL, which I don't have a video for at the moment, which is where they're using virtual reality technology. And they're using a platform called Immerse, which is by a company based in London called Immerse Learning, funnily enough. And what they're doing is they've created a collaborative platform where people can go in and they can create their own training examples. And one of the examples that DHL are using is around efficient packing and stacking. So if your delivery van it's got to have 400 parcels on it, and you've got a variety of different parcels, and you've got different locations and the different routes where they need to go. It's about training staff to be able to pack in the most efficient way to make sure the van is totally full, but also to ensure that the parcels they need are right there when they need them. So it's all about packing as effectively as possible, whilst also being forward planning for the route that you have to go on during the day. This is something that delivery drivers do learn. I was a delivery driver for a point at some point in my career, so it's something you learn, but I can tell you from personal experience, this takes like up to a month to understand and learn. And whilst you're learning, you're in there, you're in a warehouse, you're in a depot trying to do this. And the more time you spend learning this and practicing it and trying to get it right, the less time you're spending on the road, which means less money for you personally and less money for the delivery company. So if they can try and get this into your brain and help you learn it before you're actually out on the road, it means that there's less time being wasted in a warehouse, which is where time is key. So this is another use case. This is Curascope's Multiverse. So this is an education product, and we'll have another video for this one. This is just a short clip. And these are interactive posters. So they're augmented reality posters, and you can buy these in the Science Museum. And as you can see, the idea of this is to find a new way to allow people to interact with the solar system and with the Earth and with science in general. So the success metrics behind this were around how can we find a new way for kids to be engaged in science, and how can we make sure that our product is well reviewed and really enjoyed. So for Curascope, this wasn't about the profit margin or how much money they make. It was all about, are we getting positive reviews from teachers? Are kids learning more? Are we doing something that's going to benefit kids in the future? Are we going to encourage them to maybe pursue science and technology and engineering and manufacturing in a way that they might not do if they don't have like interesting and engaging tools like this? So another use case. I won't show a video for this one because the video is quite long. This is from a company called Orsted. I've already mentioned them before, a big green energy company. They produced a 360 film called a Space Safari. And within this film, you put the headset on and you're at a little lake, and an astronaut says to you, "Hi, isn't it beautiful here? This is your home. This might not look like your home. You might not live here, but I promise you, this is your home." And then it goes up, and it goes up all the way to the atmosphere. As you can see in this picture here, you end up by the International Space Station. And the objective of this project was to give the viewers a sense of the overview effect, that they realize that whilst we have so much going on in our everyday lives and everything might seem so stressful, at the end of the day, we're just this tiny dot on this tiny blue dot in a massive universe. And we've got to protect our home. And this blue dot is our home. So the return investment here that they were looking for was evoking this sense of the overview effect and trying to push viewers into addressing climate change and being more aware of climate change. So one of the first places this went to was the Climate Summit last September in New York. And they wanted to get this on the head of as many heads of state as possible. So by doing a 360 video, it was something new, it was something interesting, it was something that people were actually volunteering to go and try. So it wasn't a case of them having to have lobbyists chase heads of states in order to tell them about climate change and tell them to work with Orsted. They were coming to them. So in a way, it was also lead generation. So it was quite a beneficial device for them there as well. Here's a quick GIF, but there's not that much to it. So if you're getting started with immersive technologies, what do you need to think about? So we say the first step is to always identify your use case. There's a study that came out from MakeReal, who I mentioned earlier, and they said that in the past 3 years or so, 4 years, 50% or 56% of businesses had started working on VR and AR projects without having an identified business case, an identified use case. And this means they're basically shooting in the dark, trying to achieve something. They haven't proven that it's going to technically work. They haven't proven that it's going to be better than their current solutions out there. and they haven't proven or decided exactly how they're going to prove that it works. So identifying your use case allows you to kind of have a clear vision of where you're going and almost have these pillars, like these unmovable pillars of this is what we're trying to create. It's quite commonly known for software development that you need to like kind of have like some staples down and then you can work from there. This is where step 2, the creating a test experience, comes in. So this is all about proving your hypothesis before you really commit to something. So the example that MakeReal used for this is climbing that ladder on the wind turbine that you saw in the Orsted video from earlier on when you're disembarking the boat. They're like, okay, let's get them to climb up a ladder. Let's use the VR controllers. They'll go up the ladder. But how do we know it's going to feel like a ladder? So the first thing they did is they went for some really low-end solutions. They went to the Unity store, which is like an asset store. So you can take pre-made assets. They paid for a ladder. And then they got the developers to build all the user interaction required to have the character hold on to each rung. And as they pull down, they go up. And then they took that to the client. And they said to the client, you wanted to make it feel like you're actually on a ladder and you actually have a sense of danger. Try this with some of your workforce and let us know their reactions. And they had people going up the ladder and then being scared to let go, or people going up the ladder and then carefully climbing back down. And what that proved to them is that maybe this has legs, maybe there is really something here. And then they doubled down and opened up the full budget for the project. So this was, testing, making sure that what you actually want to do might actually work before getting more invested into it. And then finally, it's about measuring and tracking effectively. So making sure you have your success objectives at the very start means you know what to measure and you're not scrambling, trying to find things to measure and how to find the success once the project's already been made. But also, if you're measuring from as soon as you can and you're trying to do it as effectively as possible, it means you can also notice when you're not hitting certain success metrics, and you can kind of reconvene and reiterate and find out exactly what's not working and then try and develop it from there to get to where you need to go to. So if we were doing this in a workshop, this would be where it'd be more like an exercise where we'd kind of, put some ideas together as a group, then we'd start to like flesh them out as a group together. So I'm going to show you a couple of resources now, which I hope will be really helpful to you if you're looking at exploring this type of technology further. So for identifying your use case, I suggest you go to MakeReal's website. On their website, they have a little call to action about halfway down that can put you through to their use case identification form that they've created. And it's essentially a worksheet and it has some questions there it asks you. And then as you answer these questions, you're essentially building your use case. And then once you finish this worksheet, you'll be at a stage where you'll have this A4 or A3 piece of paper, depending on how big you want to make it. You'll have this A3 piece of paper that's almost like, this is the plan. And then you could walk into any production company, or you could walk to your own development team and go, this is what I want to do. And that will give them a real good start. So rather than toing and throwing between production companies and getting them to talk to you and them trying to sell you in extra consultancy and stuff, this gives you the kind of real step forwards and hopefully establishes exactly what you're trying to create. If you're looking at finding production companies, you're always welcome to come and talk to us. We've been working in the space for 5 years. We're more than happy to recommend people based on who we think has worked on successful stuff that has been relevant to what you're looking to create. Obviously, we want to be objective. So I'd also recommend talking to AIXR, which is the Academy of International Extended Reality. They're actually based in Essex as well. And they're like a massive membership organization globally that works with XR professionals. And finally, Immerse UK, the ones who commissioned that report that I mentioned earlier, where they're publicly funded and where they're also a membership group. It's in their interest to provide value for their members. So if you have an idea or if you want to talk to production companies, they're going to go out of their way to try and introduce you to the right people. On the other hand, if maybe you've got some software development experience, maybe traditionally you've been a software company, you might just think that you can handle this yourself and you might just need to find some talented freelancers to help you get there. For this, I recommend the Blend Market. So the Blend Market is a marketplace created by Blend Media, And on here, you can upload your briefs, you can upload your budget, and you can upload any extra resources. And then creatives on the platform can respond to you, and they can either agree to your budget, they can repitch their own budget, and they can ask you different questions. But this means that freelancers are actively pursuing you based on projects they think that they could achieve. And you also, depending on how flexible you want to be, you can have small creative teams who might want to get in touch and stuff like that as well. So I find that Blend Market is really good if you've kind of got a brief in your mind already and you know what you want to make. So we're just going to touch on what we think is next. And yeah, this mainly revolves around 5G, COVID-19, and the immersive industry for 2020. So obviously COVID-19 has us all locked down in our homes. And we've already seen a real large boost in virtual reality applications that allow you to be energetic. So things like Beat Saber or things like Supernatural, where they're almost exercise and almost workouts, but with your VR headset on. Things for escapism. So on the right-hand side, you can see the guided meditation VR. So you're in this beautiful paradise and you can just sit down, chill out, and have some guided meditation come into your ears. And then social platforms. So we have AltSpace down here, and that's a virtual reality platform where you can meet other people, talk to other people, and they host a lot of virtual events and talks and things in there as well. So this is all ways of trying to continue our normal lives in a new approach. So working out, staying relaxed, meeting people in a new and different way. Additionally, here's a little example from Ford. I think this might be a bit choppy on your screen as well, just because Zoom doesn't particularly like moving images very much. But this is where Ford are using VR as part of their vehicle development and their rapid prototyping. Similar to what I said earlier about the Orion spacecraft and how they're using rapid prototyping. I've got one final example to show you. This is just towards the future in general. And this is where I see a potential user experience. So this is a proof of concept for the Apple credit card, where you actually have a tangible credit card in your hand, but then rather than using something like Monzo or the Starling Bank app to look at your transactions, they're all there in an augmented display. So yeah, thank you so much for taking the time to listen today. If you have any questions, please feel free to put them in the Q&A box or even in the chat box, and we're more than happy to chat them through with you. Alternatively, if you don't think of anything now, but something comes to you later, then just send us a tweet at Virtual Umbrella, or you can email me directly. I'm Bertie at virtualumbrella.marketing, or you can email my co-founder and the CEO of the company, Samantha. Samantha's actually a lot better at her emails than I am. So if it's something really important, I'd really recommend that you email her. Cool. And with that, I'd like to say thank you.
Okay. Thank you so much for that, Bertie. That was quite a comprehensive presentation. So I would like to close off by thanking everyone in attendance for joining us in today's webinar. Please do check out our further webinars on UEZ's Eventbrite page. We'll also be sending out our post-webinar surveys. Do fill those in, and they do help us provide a better service to you. And, oh, I believe we've got one question. We'll address that in a second. For those of you that do have a pre-booked one-to-ones, they will start shortly after the webinar. Now, if we just move on to the question section, I believe it was asked by John. And that is, how do you know if your project is appropriate for VR or AR?
So this is actually a really important question. And normally the answer will come to you whilst you're doing this use case identification. So if you can see that, for example, the problem you're trying to solve is engagement in your workforce, then, and you've got a workforce of hundreds of thousands, then you can already see that VR might potentially be a problem because you're going to have to buy hundreds of thousands of headsets, but everyone has a phone already. If you're trying to do something a bit more in depth, you want people to have a much deeper, insightful experience, and it's not so important about reach, then maybe something like virtual reality is better because you only need to buy maybe 100 headsets. People can try the headsets when they're in the head office and they can have those immersive experiences from there. But like I said, this is the kind of thing that will normally, it will come to you during your use case identification or while you're trying to figure all that out. But the other thing I do say to people is to kind of take it upon yourself to get educated, spend time researching different technologies. If someone says to you, oh, augmented reality might be good for this, take some time to go and like Google some applications for augmented reality, see someone who's done something relevant and interesting in the past that might be a similar use case to you, just before you just put your blind faith in, we're going to create an augmented reality thing because somebody said that would be good.
Okay, I think we're going to give it just a couple of more seconds just to see whether we'll have any other questions. If we do that. We've got a question from D. Spence. So for AR, the main barrier seems to be getting a consumer to install your application. So how do you see the friction on that reducing in the future on an Android or Apple level? So how do you reduce that, I suppose?
Yeah, there we go. Just getting a bit more comfortable. So getting someone to download your app is obviously difficult because you have to create adverts or create calls to action to push them to the App Store. Then they're going to look at the reviews and then they're going to read. It's not just as simple as pressing a button and hoping they go somewhere. So looking at things like web AR is a potential solution here. So this is by Mozilla are really pushing web AR, and so are Google to an extent. And this is where the augmented reality application basically runs in a browser. So you press a link, it opens up Chrome or it opens up Safari on your phone, and then the app is right there and it's already running. So I think that is the way we're going to see reductions to the barrier happening a lot faster. So I talked about this earlier with Christian. This may have been before the webinar fully started. If you Google something like how big is a wolf on your phone and you've got Chrome, one of the top results on your phone will be like, it'll be a 3D model of a wolf and it will say, put a wolf in your home. And you press that and then it will go to your camera and you'll have an augmented reality wolf in your house. And that's as simple as just Googling it. And you have these kind of things available to you. I think another one, which they had at Easter, was like, show me the Easter bunny. And if you search, show me the Easter bunny, the top result was an augmented reality model. And then you just pressed it and you could have an Easter bunny like on your desk and stuff like that. So I think that is where we're going to see this real, almost like equalization. I think that's where it's going to become much easier for us to get people using our apps.
Okay, just a couple more seconds. We'll see whether we've got any other questions.
Yeah, D. Spence, I hope that answers your question. If you have any other like questions or you want to go into more depth, feel free to like tweet me or fire me an email, because I could talk about this stuff for days. Okay,
I don't see anything else coming in. So just to finish up, I would like to mention that the first pre-booked one-to-one will start at 2:10 and the second at 2:50. And with that, I would like to thank everyone in attendance, and I hope to see you in our next webinar. Thank you very much.
Cool. Thank you very much, everyone. And I hope to talk to you all again soon.